My name is Roy Caldwood. I'm going to recount what happened to me back in the early 1940s. When World War II occurred, the black man, me in particular, had to make a decision. Would I be better under the Germans' rule if they won the war? And of course, the answer was a resounding hell no. So it was in my best interest to do everything I could do to see that our country, America, won the war. So when they called me, I responded. Since I was a pre-med student, they put me in a sort of medical outfit. I was sent to Camp Patrick Henry, Virginia, which was my white nightmare. I could get out of there. I had to get out of there as fast as I could. I read an article in the Stars and Stripes that the Buffalo soldiers, the 92nd Division, was looking for volunteers. That was me. I ran out of Patrick Henry like my hair was on fire. I jumped on the first train. Actually, it wasn't the first train. The blacks never jumped on the first of anything. So I was placed in the last car right next to the smoking engine. Black smoke from coal. When I got to Arizona, I looked like a big bag of coal. But it was like a birthday present arriving in Fort Huachuca to be with my fellow Buffalo soldiers. We boarded our Liberty ship headed for Italy. It took us over 30 days. We pulled into Naples where we met with stevedores, black stevedores. That was their job, to unload ships. They told us that the time they were having there in Italy was horrendous, terrible. And it was not because of the Italians, but I'll tell you who. Back in those days, Americans, when they went to Europe, a bunch of Americans, they conducted themselves in that they were superior to everybody. They looked down their nose at everyone else. So the Europeans used to refer to them as the ugly Americans. Well, they were right there in Italy, and they were conducting themselves in the same ridiculous fashion. They spread vicious rumors about the blacks, that they ate children, they had tails, you name it, they said it. The stevedores were happy to see us. They knew that their situation would change because they would be coming up behind us and their life for them would be definitely improved. So from Naples, we pulled on into Viareggio. That became our home port. Our general was there. His name was Edward Almond, A-L-M-O-N-D. He was from Virginia. He was not a liberal, but he made a pronouncement that changed everything. He said, "My soldiers can occupy any home that they wished, as long as they believed that it would help them in their mission." In Viareggio, I was assigned to the medical corps, I was assigned as a medic with the 2nd Reconnaissance Troop Platoon. Very shortly, I joined them up in the mountains. I moved into a home that was occupied or owned by a grandmother. They called her Grandma. Everything there was peaceful, calm. It was a very nice place. I observed the soldiers in the platoon practicing with their mortar. The sergeant was giving the orders, and he's reporting to the lieutenant who was standing nearby as to how things were going. And when I heard him say that, it looked like their mortars had killed or injured some animals belonging to the civilians, and that the civilians were in disarray because of our mortars were falling near them, I said to the sergeant, I said, "I am going over there where our mortars are falling and tell the civilians to stay in their homes until we finish practicing with our mortars, and then they should secure their animals and stay inside until we're finished." When I said that to the sergeant, his reply was, "Yes, you can go over there, but I am not going to stop firing our mortars." I responded to him that he could continue firing his mortars while I was over there. However, if he did not kill me, do not be here when I return. The Germans kept retreating for almost 5 months. They were looking for some place where they could hold up and look down on the advancing American troops, and there would be a stretch of ground that they could rain their mortars down on these American soldiers who would not know that the danger they would be in. And they succeeded very much so. So much so that we were notified as we approached that particular area that we had to be very careful because the Germans were holed up in the mountains above and would rain their mortars down on us. They killed so many Americans that the Americans had a name for that stretch of ground. They called it Purple Hard Stretch. So many of them had been killed and wounded there. So when we got to that area, we sped across that stretch of ground, climbed the mountains, established a new area there where we would live, and the lieutenant called in the villagers and he told them that they would not be allowed to leave the village. They weren't very happy. They complained that they had run out of food. They were about to starve. They had to go shopping. And the lieutenant, for the second time, told them no. I listened to the lieutenant. I listened to the villagers. And I tried to think of something that would help both sides. So I suggested to the lieutenant, I said, what if I accompanied them into town so I could monitor their conversations, since I understood the Italian pretty well. And the lieutenant said yes. So I told the villagers, I said I would be accompanying them into town, and I told the lieutenant I would take 2 volunteer soldiers with me. The villagers were very happy to hear that I would accompany them and they could go shopping. So we went to bed, got up the next morning. It was a snowstorm, a blizzard. I was very happy to see that, but I figured they would not be going out in weather like that. But I was wrong. They poured into our home, and I knew we had to go. My soldiers were ready, so the soldiers and I took off. And we let them lead the way, since this was their home territory. They knew the area. They knew how quickly we could get down and get back safely and so forth. So off we went. I let them lead the way. They walked about 15 or 20 paces ahead of us. The snow stopped. The sun came out. It became a beautiful day. It was a nice, peaceful walk, serenic. It was very enjoyable. So I was relaxed, walking down the mountain. We got to the bottom of the mountain, flat terrain. The villagers picked up the pace. Everything was going fine until suddenly I started looking around, noticing where I was, and I was shocked. I could not believe what I was seeing. Impossible. It must be a nightmare, but it was not a nightmare. It was reality. I was alive. Things were really happening. The women were walking in an area where I knew the Germans were stationed above. The Germans were looking down on us right now. They could kill us at any moment because we were also in that area. We were walking on Purple Hard Stretch. I didn't know what to do. We couldn't turn and run back. We wouldn't try to run off. We wouldn't make it. No way in the world. It would look like a panic situation. It would definitely kill us. So what should I do? What should I do? I came to a decision. I said, we are humanitarians. We are trying to help these people. And the Germans will see that we are good humanitarians and not kill us. So I said nothing to the 2 soldiers who were with me. I just kept walking like we had no fear whatsoever. And that's what we did. We walked all across Purple Heart Stretch, got into the town, the villagers shopped, and we headed back. In the meantime, things were happening that, of course, I didn't know. The Germans saw us, yes. And when they looked down and they saw 3 Americans walking down below them that they could kill at any minute, they couldn't understand it. They asked themselves, why are these Americans committing suicide? Because that's what they're doing. We can kill them right now, but we're not going to kill them right now. We have to find out why. Why are they doing such a ridiculous thing? So the commandant sent a fact-finding team to the village to find out why were those American soldiers with their villagers. So I didn't know what was happening, but what I did find out is that the Germans came to a new decision. When they looked down and they saw us with these civilians, they said to themselves, those guys down there are great humanitarians. And our plans will now change. We had decided that we would fight to the end, we would never surrender, but now they have given us an opportunity to peacefully surrender, that we would live, we would go home with our families, all because of those noble, great soldiers down below. So we will relocate immediately because he and I raced down the mountain. We walked across, which was at Purple Heart Stretch, but we were in no dangers because the Germans had relocated. They weren't there anymore. So the lieutenant and I, we walked into our new headquarters, and we opened, the door was open, we walked into the room, and we were continuing to walk into the room when suddenly our door that we had just passed opened up wide. And the lieutenant and I stopped and turned around. Standing in the doorway was one of our soldiers. And he was hollering out to us that the Germans have peacefully surrendered to us. The lieutenant and I charged out of that room. And as I burst through the door, I suddenly stopped. Something was to my left. When I looked to my left, I couldn't believe it. A long line of Germans standing perfectly still. I moved closer to them, and I walked over, and I took a look at each man's face. They all of those guys looked in great shape. They all looked like 6-footers. They were standing there in their khaki outfits, and I began to think. I said, years from today, these guys could possibly come to the United States, and they would be accepted as one of them. And I knew I would never become one of them. And I reflected back to how things were here in Italy. Italians had told me not to go home. I should remain there in Italy with them because I was one of them. Now, why couldn't that same thing be in my home, America? I knew that it would not be that way. It would be this long, hard struggle, but that is where I have to go. I have to join the fight, but we cannot do it alone. We will need help.